This is Basel on Cycling, the podcast that brings you on thrilling adventures in the world of cycling, ultracycling, and bikepacking. I'm your host, Sherry. Today's episode is brought to you by Basel on Coffee. Check out the 3 new coffees and the link in the description and bio. Today is all about ultracycling, season recap, and Dotwatchers with managing editor Kitty Dennis. Welcome to the show.
Hiya, thank you for having me. I'm looking forward to it.
Great to have you in the show, but you're not only an editor, but also a ultracyclist yourself, right?
A little bit. I mean, I started working at Dotwatcher after I worked at a different bike company, and I did a lot of bike packing, but I never did any ultracycling. So I was like, oh, I'll give it a go. And I've had a lot of scratches, and I've finished a single race. I am by no means a very experienced or very serious ultracyclist, but I am a very experienced dot watcher. So at least there's that. But yeah, I've done 4 races now and I enjoy them. I just think I need to probably train a bit more.
Yeah, you learn a lot with every race, I think. But can you tell us a bit more about Dot Watchers and how did you start it? I guess a lot of people are not familiar, but it's a great community. It's something I really enjoy.
So, great question, because it's so nobody really knows where it came from, because it was kind of an idea that was discussed between a lot of people. So I joined at the end of 2021, but it's been going on and off since 2018. And it was the idea of a few people, but the main sort of person that was doing it was Tori Fahey, who's the founder of Apogura. And so she did a lot of ultracycling, a very, very good ultracyclist, and she did the Tour Divide, and basically just came up with this idea, and then a few people came on to help it become a reality. So Jenny Tuff helped, and then somebody who's really into ultra distance and all that is another person called Grace Lambert Smith. And they ran it to basically give people an insight into ultracycling, because there's no way of knowing what's happening in ultracycling. So they came up with this idea, and then everyone sort of moved on to a new job, and I came on with Becky, who's been working there since the start of 2021, and we run it now, the 3 of us, Becky Waters, Nikki Shaw, and myself. And it came about basically for exactly what I've said. Nobody knew what was happening in ultracycling, and you go to a race, and I remember going to a race and thinking, I'm doing all of this stuff, I love it, but nobody knows what's happening. Nobody knows what's going on here. So I think it was the idea that you can turn on the TV and watch the Tour de France, but you can't watch equally as amazing athletes, like going out and riding the whole of the continent. So it came about through that, and then just slowly developed into sharing a bit more information as well to maybe help newer people into the sport.
Wow, that's great. Yes, I think that's something I really enjoy, that you can you put a story behind the dot, so it's not just a dot moving when you're watching the tracker. It's like you actually share the stories on the road of different riders, not only the people that sometimes I feel like only the lead group gets a bit of coverage of somebody knows what's going on there, but you also share the stories of other riders, and I find it very interesting. And can you tell us maybe some secrets about, Dot Watcher? What is the most interesting, like, features? Like, would you say, like, I've seen that there is some race analytics, etc. So I feel like I don't know much about it. I kind of read the reports, but that's it.
So that's really interesting, because there is one really, really good feature that nobody uses, we do use a developer. He's called Alex, and he himself is an ultracyclist. And he's worked with a few other developers, started this along the way, but they made the profiles. And if you claim your profile, you can see the percentage of races that you've done on road, the percentage that you've done off road, your distance per year. There's huge results, and you can then take a look at that and compare it. So if you're someone like yourself who's racing sort of 4 or 5 races every year, you'll be able to compare each race with each other and compare yourself to everyone else.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, and nobody knows it's there. And I think it's because we we're a very small scale operation at the moment, and so we want people to look at the commentary, but the results are the biggest feature that we have that is completely our own. We are the only place that has results from every ultracycling race we possibly could get. I mean, please, if there's other
Mhm.
people who want to send their results, please send them. But it means that you've got a whole profile analysing your stats, and it shows you where you've been off road, on road, all of this stuff just in your rider profile. So I definitely recommend looking at that.
Oh wow, that's a game changer. I actually, I'm really into analytics after the races, but I didn't know that feature. So I will definitely have a look at my profile. I think I created one, but it would be really interesting to see, as you said, comparing the different races.
Yeah, I looked at yours before I came on this call, and we it takes a while because we have to manually upload the results. So the 2023 results
Mhm.
aren't there, but yours is very very well populated. You've been racing a lot since 2022.
Yeah, I think once you get the ultra bug, it's kind of difficult to stop. I think sometimes I take on too many events. I feel it now, maybe I don't leave enough recovery in between them. Yeah.
But you've finished all of the ones you've started, haven't you?
Yeah, but to be honest, the last one, Bohemian Border Bash, I was about not to start on the race because I was still feeling transcontinental and Paris Brest, and I was so super scared about off-road ultra cycling. So I was like, okay, the day before I was like, I'm not gonna go to the race, and then I was like, okay, go there. My partner told me, go there, take it as a bikepacking trip. You can also enjoy an ultra race. You don't have to race it all the time. I was like, maybe, yeah, just for the experience. But when you see that you're starting to do well, then you're like, maybe I skip one night. And yeah, but I think that's the amazing thing of ultra races. It's not a race, it's like a whole experience itself.
Yeah, and you came first woman at that, didn't you?
Yeah.
I was following you on that, and I just thought it was so impressive that you'd done that after, as you said, the TCR and PBP. It was a really cool watch.
Thank you so much. But it was also very encouraging because there were a lot of women in the race. And it was an inspiration for me because I was like, I'm scared to go into the forest at night. If something happens to me. But then I saw other women riding through the night and everything. I was like, okay, if they are not scared, I can do it too. So it was a huge inspiration to see. Actually, there were at least, I think, 20 women or
Mm.
something like that. It was like huge numbers. And I think is really changing. I think you are actually doing a project related, right?
Oh,
Trailblazers, I think.
so yeah, so that's like what I'm doing personally, and obviously it helps with Dotwatcher. But myself and a filmographer, a videographer called Catherine Dunn, are running a project through a group that I run called the Steezy Collective, where we're just trying
Hmm.
to get more women to do off-road ultra cycling. Because I think what you've touched on there about like being alone in the forest or like being alone in the middle of nowhere, I think is
Yeah.
something that, not generalizing, but seems to be something that women are more nervous about. And you're exactly right. You see one or two women doing it and you think they're different, they're special. Whereas when there's 20 women there, you just think we can all do this. It's incredible.
Yeah.
But the project was 9 months, started in March and finished. It's not fully finished, but we're still showing the film. But I did a graph, and obviously I'm from the UK, so the biggest sort of
Hmm.
off-road race is the Highland Trail.
Yeah.
And it's gone from one woman in the first year to two women to four women to one woman to five women, and then last year it was 16, and then this year it was almost
Oh.
30 women. And the difference it makes just seeing other women at these events is incredible. I really love it because you're right, ultra cycling's amazing, and I think everyone should be able to experience it.
Yes, indeed, and I think it's great that you have a playing field kind of. You can compete against men, women, everybody. And it's also like a race against yourself, but you have so many ways to do well in the race. So it's not just like, your power depends of your strategies, how efficient you are. And that's something I really enjoy. Ultra cycling, I think, is very inclusive.
Mm,
I feel welcome, like, however I am. It's like, no matter your bike, your setup, you can have an expensive bike, a more affordable bike, you can have a titanium, carbon, no matter your setup. Everybody can do it, and everybody can perform well. Like,
yeah.
it doesn't it's not all dependent on your power, your equipment, etc. So I think that's really inclusive, and something I really enjoy, the diversity of the community, like many different riders and way to approach the race.
Yeah, I mean it's amazing, and I think I remember, so last year every year we do the Dotwatcher Awards, and they're based on what the community says they've enjoyed seeing. And last year you got the best self documentation award, and we never really discussed like why it happened, but a big reason that we did it is your race around the Netherlands film. And we had
Yeah.
feedback from people saying that because it was your first ultra, wasn't it? And
Yeah, yeah, I was the first.
it was so cool, and it was a way of kind of showing that like anyone can do it and they can be competitive. I mean, obviously you train a lot, you work really hard, but you made it seem like it was something that everyone could have a go at. And I think that that sort of content out there from people who are willing to say, this is really, really hard, rather than being like, oh, it was easy, it took me like 2 days. And I think we need to see more of that content, just like it was really hard, but I really enjoyed it and I'm glad I did it. And I think that that
Yeah.
makes it more diverse, 100%.
Yeah, I was really happy with the award, and you even created a special badge for me with the GoPro. That was super cool. I was like, wow, that's amazing. But I think, that's why I started the YouTube channel. So to share, how is to be like a beginner in cycling, and how you can, achieve things in these races, finish them, and how is the journey itself. So I always think, okay, what I would like to know if I was to start in an ultra race. So that's always, it's not about me, it's about sharing, for people, to be able to do them themselves, and show that, yeah, you can do it. You don't need to be an expert, you don't need to know how to change a tire. Maybe you should, but I'm still learning. So yeah, I think that's the beauty of it. You can find your way. And in regards to the Dot Watchers Award, so this year is going to be in December. So how people can participate, or can you explain a bit more about it?
So actually, I was going to put up an Instagram post today, because what happened last year is across Andes is obviously the second to last, but the last sort of really big race of the season. And what we found was that by starting the awards in November, we cut
Hmm.
out any chance of anyone across Andes getting an award. So we've done it. It came out in the digest yesterday, and it will be coming on. We'll be posting the form on Instagram. But basically, once the link's there, you just go on the Google form. We don't collect any information. We're not taking emails or anything. We just want to know who you thought was important or really inspirational in that year, and tell us why. And then what we do is we take that and we create the awards from it. So last year, every year we always have a best dot watcher
Hmm.
and the best dot, which is like the best rider and then the best person who's done the commentary. But last year we came up with lots of different awards because there were just people who inspired a lot of people. And I remember there was the best pair was two women called Mimi Anderson and Lowry Morgan. And they were two women who'd been ultra running their whole entire lives. And then
Oh,
suddenly,
wow.
like, they just go out and they do the Wild West Country and then the Pan Celtic race as a pair in 1 year. And they're like bivvying over the side of walls. They're like sleeping in the middle of nowhere. And I was like, wow, like anyone who thinks that ultra cycling isn't for them can see these seasoned ultra runners just suddenly go out and smash ultra distance races. It's incredible. So
Yeah, they were also quite funny sharing all the stories on Instagram. No, I remember seeing the Punk Celtic
yeah,
Instagram stories from them, and they were really funny. They really took it, the adversity, like, yeah, we just gonna have fun, so just keep on going.
yeah, Mimi in particular. has some incredible stories. If you ever want to see like a very, very honest and open recounting of an ultra distance race, watch Mimi's because they're just so good.
Yeah, that's true. And for example, you mentioned the commentators on the races. So everybody can volunteer to do the race coverage, or how does it work? How people can contribute to this?
So thank you for bringing that up because we're always looking for commentators. Dotwatcher's community run, and it is run by volunteer commentators. So, for example, if you have done a race a few times or you've done a race once, you really enjoyed it, but you don't want to do the race again, we do a commentator thing where you sign up to commentate. We show you how to do it and then let you go for it. And some people really, really enjoy it. They enjoy sharing their stories. They enjoy learning more about the race because you get to talk to the race directors, other veterans. You
Hmm.
commentate on the race, and then afterwards you get to go home and not have to have done a whole ultra distance race. So it's, if you want to volunteer, just email us or just send us a message on Instagram. But I would say I do quite a lot of commentary, and I feel like
Hmm.
I've ridden some of these races. That obviously haven't. And we have like a perk scheme where if you choose to commentate, we can send you some information from our sponsors. But really, it's just giving back to the community, and anyone who wants to can do.
Ah, that's amazing. Yeah, I really enjoy also how different are the commentaries, like the different way of somebody to write it. And yeah, as you said, you can experience the race while following it. I feel like it's really nice when you know somebody in the race and you start following the dot and then you see what's going on in the race. Or even when you do a race and then you read the dot watcher commentary, is like, oh, you can relive your experience, or a lot of things you didn't realize happened during the race.
Mm.
That was the case in TCR. I started reading the commentary after I finished the race, like, wow, didn't realize all these things happen.
Yeah, but it's also we the way we show people how to commentate. A lot of it is coming from we for big races we set up a WhatsApp group with
Hmm.
race vets and the organisers. But for most races, if you're posting funny or interesting or insightful things on social media, we're watching what everyone's doing. And so it isn't always the people at the front who are like head down in their TT bars. It's the people in the middle who are like telling us about their snacks or the way they've
Yeah.
been wrong. So it's always nice to be able to share those different stories. And I look back when I've done a race and I'm like, nobody told me that happened.
Yes, exactly, exactly. And on that point, have you seen many changes going on, for example, with all the new ultra races? Like, is the scene changing a little bit in your experience? Like, how do you see is evolving the ultra cycling community races?
So that's a really interesting question because, as I said, like I started at Dotwatcher in 2021, and I was following ultracycling, but I wasn't a big ultracyclist. But Becky and Nikki, who are on the team, have been racing for a really long time. Sort of 2015 and 2016 is when they both started. And back then it was like a few races, that was it. And it was all based on the Transcontinental race and the Tour
Hmm.
Divide. Whereas now, like, there are races popping up everywhere, and we run the Apogura bikepacking events calendar as part of the
Hmm.
sponsorship. We do that for them. Really enjoy doing it, which means we see pretty much every race that's come up, and the amount of races that are off road and in the Alps this year is incredible.
Yeah.
So I think there's a huge move from this sort of road race with very strict rules to a lot more off road, more about the vibe than the actual
Hmm.
rules. And I think there's a space for all of them, but I think these slightly shorter, slightly more manageable off road races are bringing a lot more people into the sport. And I have a friend who I may or may not have accidentally told her to sign up to an ultra distance race. And she did that one, which was a road race, and then finished Badlands this year. And I think that seeing the sort of range of races and how it's gone from very strict and on the road to so many more, it's more accessible. But we are at a point now where there's sort of so many similar races that you don't know what to choose, and a lot in Europe and a lot off-road. So I think it's becoming more inclusive, but it's definitely becoming a little bit less, I don't want to say like controlled, but you don't know what you're getting into with some of the races. Whereas 5-6 years ago, there was about 10 races that people went to and you knew the rules. So it's different. And I'm really excited for this season. I think there's like 30 new races or something.
Which are the races that you're more excited or curious about? I mean, for me, I think I find the ones in exotic locations like very interesting. I was looking at the Rhino Run and I was like, that looks like a really cool adventure.
Yeah, the Rhino Run is cool. I think the thing about the races for me in those locations is I don't do very well in the heat, but they are really exciting. And I think, I'm not sure how much of uh, I don't know how to say it, a exotic location it is, but the Accursed race is going to be really exciting, which is Lost Dot's new offering. And I think why I'm excited about that is because it's basically going through the Balkans, but it's a fixed route off-road. But the no-fly means that the adventure doesn't start when you get on the plane and take a taxi. There's going to be people who are going to bike pack to the start of a race, or they're going to take
Yeah.
trains, or they're going to, I don't know, water ski to get there. And I think I'm really excited about that because of the story around it rather than just the race. And then the other thing that I'm really excited about, which I'm always really excited about, is the Dead Ends and Cakes races and the Dead Ends and Dolce. I just think the idea that you go and get a different cake at every checkpoint is the best thing in the world.
Yes, that's definitely some motivation, I will say.
Yeah.
Wow, that's really interesting. Yes, now there's races that come in with very different formats. Not only, as you said, you have the off roads, the road. Now you have the self routed, the fixed routed, and you did one that is quite complex, the All Points North, right?
Mm.
Like there's so many different ways to do this one.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. So I've tried to do All Points North twice. The first time I did it, I was very, very, very out of my depth. I didn't really know what was going on. But this one is in the north of England and there's 10 checkpoints, but it's any order you go. And the difference in the routes is just incredible. Some people will zigzag across the country, although that's not super popular. Or some people, Pavel Pico Pulowski, who is the founder of the race through Poland, he's won it a few times. And his routes, he must spend days and days doing them because I've never seen such an, like, he will pick the roads that are flattest, fastest, and everything. He wrote a really good article, did a really good interview with Nikki about how to plan them. But that race is really difficult because you spend the whole race going, am I going the right way? And then you're like, don't look at the tracking. And then you look and you're like, oh no, everyone else went the other way. It's very good, but very hard.
Yes, I had the same even in TCR, so I was like, oh no, everybody's taking the other road, and you are like, oh, maybe I did the wrong choice. Or it's very, I think the self routed ones is, in my opinion, more like a mental challenge than a physical one, because there's so many things to take care of, like your route, if you go across countries, etc. It's like a lot of things that I don't know. Find like you cannot think about everything at the same time, and then it's like, oh no,
Yeah,
you can make a lot of mistakes there.
100%. And I think the problem with it as well is that if you don't think about everything, you end up missing food stops, you end up missing water, bike shops. Whereas when people route the races, they kind of take that into consideration. And I think the one thing I don't like about free route races, as much as there's positives to them, is that you're very unlikely to be seeing other people on the road. And I think that sometimes that's a really big boost. I don't know. What do you think? Do you like seeing other people or does it make you stressed?
Well, I really like seeing other people, but at the beginning, I'm a bit stressed, when everybody is together because you have the adrenaline. It's like people are overtaking you and you don't want to overextend
Mm.
yourself at the beginning. So I find it a bit stressful. Then I'm kind of, oh, now I can go in bikepacking mode. But when you do races solo, it's like after it's like, oh my God, I haven't seen anybody or spoke with anybody in like a day or two. So yeah, I'm happy when I see. Also, it motivates me when I see at night the blinking light, and it's like your mind goes okay from sleepy to chase mode. It's like really like something switch on you, and you start okay, let's do it.
I love that you're chasing blinking lights through the night. It'd be funny if it wasn't even a cyclist, if it was just like a moped that you were trying to keep up with.
Yeah, yeah, but you go like chase. I start telling myself like chase mode, try to catch them. It's kind of like you have to play games with yourself to keep yourself motivated, like a small goals, or if you see a blinking light, or yeah, I think that's the thing. You can go into this bikepacking mode, and then you start relaxing, making more breaks and everything. So you sometimes have to tell yourself, okay, I'm in a race. Like let's keep pushing it. I will say, but I don't know. I find it sometimes now it's changing a lot in terms of rules. Like you're always worried about which rules what to do. Is like, can I say hello to somebody or something? So I think it changed a lot from the beginning of the races. Right now, you even have some races that have sleeping rules. What are your thoughts about all of this?
So that's a really interesting question because we talk about it a lot at Dotwatcher about rules, and it's why we write the round tables. So we did a round table on the sleeping stuff, and we also did round tables about a few other rules that have been implemented. And I think that our stance as Dotwatcher is always it's always better to have a range of rules because it means that you can test it out and understand it in different ways. But also, I personally might not want to race with sleeping rules, or I might want one. So I can choose between the two. And that's what's nice about there not being one single rule. Personally, for
Mm-hmm.
me, I would like a race without the rules of a stop because I'm so much slower that I need that extra time. But at the same time, I sleep longer than that anyway, so it doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
So I think that people getting frustrated about it, I understand the frustration, but at the end of the day, there's so many races with so many rules that it's up to you which race you go to. So I
Mm-hmm.
think it doesn't matter whether or not people are doing it because we're going to find out what works and what doesn't work. The sport's so new that if somebody came up with a set of rules that everyone had to follow, it just wouldn't have come from a place of being tested.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think it gives the race its character, as you said. You can choose, so you can. It's like the free routing and fixed routes. So I think there's so many nice races and off road, as you mentioned. There's so many nice off road races now. I mean, I took my first challenge off road this year, and I'm like now like that's really nice. It's very different from road races. I think you have to be more focused, and I noticed that people actually sleep more in these races because it's not that you can just
Mm.
cycle and you like okay just cycle there. You really have to be focused on the terrain, and I think a lot of people may be less intimidated to do off-road races because you don't have to go on busy roads or there's no cars. So I think sometimes people feel it might be safer off road. I noticed that.
Yeah, I mean, you did pick one of the hardest races with Bohemian Border Bash race. But I agree. I think people sleep more because lights are a finite thing. And whereas you can have a small, like 1,000 lumen race light for your road race, you need like a massive 3,000 lumen, like spotlight if you want to see properly at night. So people don't do it as much. And then you're completely spot on with the road. I think I don't know how other people found it, but here in the north of the UK, there was this period in lockdown where there were no cars and it was great. And then the cars came back and everyone was sort of slightly tense. And I think the cars got a little bit worse and then there were more bikes on the road. And I think that while we sort of settle that down, it's nice to have the option to go off road and explore. And I think the off road races are great because I would never choose to ride in some of those places, but when it's on the route, you just got to go.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Sometimes I was doing Bohemian Border Bash and I wonder, how did he find this trail? It's like there's nobody, like you cannot find it in a map. It's like how many hours did he spend scouting all of this? Is like
No.
was really interesting. I will say, yeah, yeah. That's the beauty of it. I think that's what I like from ultra cycling versus bikepacking. Bikepacking is like a really nice. You can take your time to explore places, but you wouldn't go to certain places. In the ultra races, you are kind of forced to go
Yeah.
there, and you're like, that's actually nice. It's like you get some pretty amazing places. So I think that's also, and you go there in times you wouldn't go otherwise, like in the middle of the night or for the sunrise or for the sunsets.
Yeah, that's very true actually. Like, and I can imagine because I saw you did a lot of like carrying your bike on Bohemian Border Bash. You're like going up and you're like, why am I going up here? And then you get to the top and there's this sunrise and then you descend down and you see why it's all worth it. Whereas if it was just a normal trip,
Mhm.
I'd be like, no, not going that way.
Yeah, exactly. And there's something very interesting I saw on Dot Watchers lately, and I don't know much about. Is like about FTKs. I heard about it from running, and then I tried to look about the information about them in cycling, but I couldn't find anything. And I saw that you did an article on it, and I think it's very interesting if somebody wants to take like their own challenge.
Yeah, so this came up because I, so the Trailblazers project that I did personally with my with the group that I run called the Steezy Collective, we got some women that did the Highland Trail to try and do another one of the routes that the creator Alan Goldsmith made, which is called the Lakeland 200. And it's
Mm-hmm.
far too, and this is quite common with the FKTs, which is fastest known time attempts, is there routes that are so busy that you just couldn't do a race. I mean, if you did a race through the Lake District in the UK in the peak summer, you'd probably get in trouble. So
Yeah.
a lot of these trails that don't disappear. So some races, like the transcontinental race, you couldn't do it because every year it's different and everyone does a
Mm-hmm.
different route. But these fixed races or the fixed routes that either don't have a race or do have a race, but people want to try and push themselves, you just go out and see how fast you can go. It's really, really common in America, I think. A lot
Mm-hmm.
of the Arizona Trail race, the Colorado Trail, the Tour Divide, and races like that. And so you can either get the FKT on the race or you can get the fastest known time off the race. And some do a fastest known time race and a fastest known time in general. But I
Mm-hmm.
think it's getting more popular because we mentioned in the article, and we've got another one coming out about how to plan your FKT, is that some people have they don't have enough annual leave, they've got children, they've got an injury, and so it means they can go out and do something without having to go on a specific date and pay X amount of money and take this stuff. So it's really nice, and I think it's going to be an evolving part of ultracycling as races fill up
Mm-hmm.
quickly. But it's really cool, fastest known times, and there's a website in the UK which is run by a bike shop and
Mm-hmm.
they basically list all of the fastest known times. It's really, really great way of seeing it. A lot of spaces for the women's fastest known time. So maybe I'll go out and do one really slowly, but because I'm the only one, I get the FKT.
Why not? Yeah, I tried to find a website or some information about it, but as you said, maybe it might be pretty new in Europe, so it's
Mm.
still a bit hard maybe in this area. But I think it's a really cool initiative, as you said, for people that maybe don't have the time or can't make it to the race to still have a challenge.
Yeah.
And in regards, so you mentioned about round table. So you discuss different topics that you send in a bit the insights on the Dot Watchers newsletter. I think I saw one about scratching from races. That's very interesting. What did you see are the main reasons for people to scratch from ultra races?
So
That's something very interesting.
yeah, so Nikki, who is our newest Dotwatcher member, but our most, I don't want to say it in a way that not all of us are at this level, but Nikki wins a lot of, she becomes the first woman at a lot of races and she's very experienced. But she was finding that when she scratched, she felt this kind of, this horrible feeling that we all get of kind of like, I feel awful about myself. So she went to some of the really key figures in ultracycling that have scratched and had a conversation with them, and you can read the round table. It's in 2 parts. But she summed it up
Mm.
really well, that there's like 3 reasons that you scratch. One is you just don't want to do it anymore, the sort of mental side. Then there's mechanical, so your bike breaks, you can't keep going. And then there's injury. And I
Mm-hmm.
think that the really interesting part is that the one that people talk about the most and are so interested in is that mental side.
Mm-hmm.
And the round table is really interesting because we have a psychologist who also does ultracycling talking about it. And basically it's this concept. I don't want to speak as if I'm a psychologist. I'm not a psychologist. But it's
Mm-hmm.
this idea that people, the balance of wanting it is overcome by the balance of not wanting to be there. And I listened to your podcast with Josh Ibbott. I think it was one of your really early ones about
Mm-hmm.
his TCR insights, but he was talking about it. And he said that your mood is so determined by how tired you are, how hungry you are, how much effort you're putting in. And I think that a lot of the time, if we talked more about scratching and understood why people do it, we could actually A, help people stop scratching, but B, stop people feeling so guilty when they just don't want to be there anymore.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's something that yeah, can really happen, like the feeling of guilt,
Yeah.
like especially when you don't have any mechanical issues or health issues. It's just that you don't want to keep doing it. I think that's something that people really struggle with, and maybe might be a reason for them not to come back to another race. And then you, when you understand, okay, it's okay to scratch and that can happen, and just is an adventure, it's like nobody's gonna shame anybody for scratching or anything like that. I think that's something like yeah, really, like it's good to talk about that. I'm not the only one scratching, or it's okay.
Yeah. And to be truly honest, nobody remembers. Like, no one knows. No one's there going, oh, she scratched that race this week. So it's all about looking after yourself. And I think you're right. It's really sad that people might not come back because they scratched. Because a lot of the reason people scratched is they just weren't prepared for that race. And by getting halfway through it or 2 days through it, they've learned enough that if they come back and change what they did, they could finish it and they could do really well. So I think it's sad that people get turned off ultracycling because of a scratch.
Yeah, exactly. And a lot about experience. You build your library of top rides and races, and then next time you are in this situation, you are like, okay, I'm suffering now, but I was able to overcome that once. It was worse, so I can do this also, even if there's more factors playing, taking a role there. So I think ultracycling for me is a lot about experience. Yeah, I see also like the most successful ones are, especially in the tough races, are the more experienced ones, not actually the ones that might have a higher FTP.
Yeah. I mean, I remember in that same podcast with Josh Ibbott, you said that you get the worst when you normally go to bed. And just knowing that that's a problem, but it will go away is so
Mhm.
important. Just knowing that, like, I'm going to feel awful I go to bed at 10 o'clock. So, like, I'm going to feel awful at 10 o'clock, but come like 3 o'clock in the morning, you're like, oh, yeah, let's go. So, knowing yourself and the experience with it is just so important.
Yeah. And I was wondering, what's next for Dot Watcher? Anything exciting coming up, or also for you, like any ultra races planned for
So,
next year?
Dotwatcher, there's lots of exciting things coming up, some of which is going to be a bit of a surprise, and we're going to be like, you're going to be blown away by how cool it is. But a lot of what's going to be happening with Dotwatcher is, now that we've built a sort of bigger network of commentators, you're going to be seeing a lot more commentary from races that have maybe not been done in the past. And I think a lot of people say to us, why aren't you commentating on this race? And it's not because we don't want to, it's because we physically can't commentate without a commentator. So if you want to commentate. So you'll see more commentary, but also you'll see a lot more analysis of bikes and things like that to find out maybe what the best bike for different races is. And personally, I think actually really like interesting talking about scratching is I moved out of London and back home to the north of England, and I just didn't think about just the change in life and how it would affect my training. So I tried to do 2 races this year, and both of them were awful. Like, I enjoyed them a lot, but I just couldn't do it. And I think what I want to do is take a year to like get back into it and go back out and try some different races. But I don't fly. So I try to do a lot of races in the UK. And so I think probably I'll see myself doing some in 2025, but not 2023. But the team at Dotwatcher, you will see Nikki doing a lot of races, and Becky always does one incredible race a year. So she'll do something and you'll just be like, wow, Becky, you are incredible. So there will be a lot of interesting stuff. And I think Dotwatcher I think a lot of people don't understand why it's there. And the reason it's there is because everyone who's doing an ultra distance race, whether they admit it or not, they want somebody to know they've done it. So if people share their stories on Instagram, share their stories, email into Dotwatcher, message into Dotwatcher, we will share your story. So please, if people want to, just get in touch.
Oh, that's great. Yes, it's like an amazing community. I think that's what I enjoy the most. The first race I did, a race around the Netherlands, there were so many dot watchers on the road. You know, you had people on the side of the road that you never seen in your life, like saying, "Go, Sherry!" And I was like, "Wow, that's so nice." You know, following. It's like, "How I've been following your dot all day to see where you were and to see if I can catch you." It's so nice that also it helps to involve the local communities.
Yeah.
So maybe people who live in the Netherlands, or for example with Be Hard Ultra Race in Bosnia and Herzegovina, they think about, oh, maybe that's something I would like to do. You know, this year don't watch it, and next year I can do it myself. As it's also like a really nice work that you do to, you know, encourage more people to get into ultracycling, giving all this information not only about the races but topics like scratching or the bikes off. I think that's really useful. I always look if there's bikes off from the previous year to see what other people use.
Yeah, that's what we love about the Bikes Of. I think the Bikes Of came about because people were saying, please, can you do this? And it wasn't us going, I think we should do this. People were asking, and you can see the difference from year to year. So we did, Nikki and Becky worked on a project where it was the bikes of GB Duro. And they basically found out that you were more likely to finish the race if you were riding on a hardtail as opposed to a gravel race. This year, everyone was on a hardtail. I think maybe one person was on a gravel bike. So I think a lot of
Yeah.
people do look at it and they go, I'm not going to ride that bike.
Yes, I think Bohemian Border Bash, I was like, maybe it might be better on mountain bike. Sometimes the first part of the race is like you're glad you have a gravel bike, but as the race evolves, you're like, that's getting a mountain bike territory. So that's something really nice, and I will advise everybody who wants to do an ultra race, if there's bikes off, have a look at it. It's
Oh,
very, very good. Yeah, really nice job, and you can submit your own if you do in the race and there's bikes off. So that's really cool.
yeah. The big tip on the Bikes Of is if you take a really nice picture, we make it the cover photo and then put it on Instagram and make a big fuss about it. So we started off with like pictures that people had taken like in their garage with their phone like that. And now some people submit photos and they've like gone out, they've gone to like sunrise or sunset to take this beautiful photo of their bike. And I always think it's just the best thing ever.
Yeah, it's a bit like the bike ball, make sure everything is aligned
Yeah.
and everything. That's really cool. Wow, that's very interesting. And, I'm really excited to see how the sport evolves, the new races, and also to follow the coverage of the races next year. And I think if everybody wants to contribute to the community, as you said, you can, if you feel like there is a race that there's no cover and you would like it to be covered, you can also volunteer, no,
Yeah.
so just contacting. So I will leave a link in the show notes and description. It's been great to have you in the show, and yeah, looking forward for the next season of races.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, and thank you for sharing your insights as well.